It's funny how memory works as you get older. Names gone, completely gone. You'll meet someone new, shake their hand, and somewhere inside your brain, the words have evaporated, but the utterly irrelevant details. Oh, those are crystal clear, like the exact shade of the curtains in their living room 10 years ago. Or the fact that they once wore mismatched socks to a Christmas party. You don't need that information, it serves no purpose, but it's somehow impossible to forget. And the more you try to remember a name, the more it slips away. So there you are, smiling, politely calling someone mate or friend, all the while rehearsing the tiny, unnecessary facts that your brain has filed away forever. You'll remember the story of their cat, the brand of coffee they bought once, or the exact time they tripped on the pavement. But their name, poof, vanished. The strange part is, it almost becomes a superpower. You can recall all these odd, seemingly useless details that make conversations feel familiar and personal. You can tell someone, I remember the scarf you wore on that snowy day in 2012, and they're stunned even if you can't remember their name. And you realize maybe names aren't that important anyway. What matters is the tiny mosaic of moments, the quirks and little stories, the bits that stick and linger. Those are the things that make someone memorable, and somehow that feels more satisfying than remembering a simple name ever could. Do you catch yourself overthinking the simplest things? You start out with something tiny, choosing a sandwich, replying to a message, deciding whether to leave the house now or in 5 minutes. And before you know it, you're deep in analysis, weighing options that don't really exist. You stand there genuinely considering all the possible outcomes, as if the future depends on whether you choose white bread or brown. And at some point, you catch yourself. There's a brief pause, a moment of clarity, and you realize you've spent far longer thinking about the thing than it would have taken to just do it. That's usually when the laugh arrives. Not a big laugh, more of a quiet, private one. The kind that says, I see what's happening here. You're not annoyed, you're not frustrated. You're just mildly amused by your own mind, wandering off with confidence and absolutely no sense of proportion. And the nice thing is, once you notice it, the spell breaks, the decision becomes easy again. You choose something, anything, and the world continues exactly as it did before. Nothing collapses, no one complains, the moment passes. So when you catch yourself overthinking the small stuff, it's worth smiling at it, because that little laugh isn't giving up, it's understanding. And sometimes that's all you really need to move on, quietly and comfortably, with the day unfolding just fine. There's a moment in life when bedtime quietly shifts. No announcement, no discussion, no dramatic decision. It just happens earlier than you expect. One day you're someone who stays up late because you can, and the next you're glancing at the clock and thinking, well, that's probably enough for today. What's interesting is how reasonable it feels. There's no rebellion, no sense of missing out. You're not tired in a dramatic way, you're just done. The day has had its say, and you've listened politely. Even the idea of staying up feels like unnecessary effort, like insisting on dessert when you're already perfectly content. You start planning evenings differently without quite realizing it. Films get paused halfway through with the calm confidence that they'll still exist tomorrow. Books fall gently onto the bedside table instead of being finished. There's a quiet satisfaction in knowing you don't have to push yourself anymore. You've earned the right to stop. And the best part is the morning, waking up earlier, doesn't feel like punishment. It feels spacious. There's time for tea, for sitting quietly, for easing into the day without rushing. You realize that the earlier bedtime wasn't about getting older. It was about choosing peace over resistance. So when you find yourself heading to bed earlier than you once would have, don't fight it. You're not missing anything. You're simply listening to a quieter rhythm. Now, and honestly, it's a rather pleasant one to fall asleep to. There's a quiet moment that sneaks up on you at some point in life, when you realize you've picked something up again that you once put down for good, a hobby, something you were absolutely certain you'd outgrown, not abandoned temporarily, finished with. Maybe it's an old book or a bit of music you haven't listened to in years. Maybe it's something you haven't even thought about for decades. You don't make a big decision about it. You just find yourself doing it, almost by accident, and wondering why you ever stopped. What's different now is the pace. You're not trying to be good at it. You're not trying to turn it into anything. You're just enjoying the shape of it, the familiarity, the feeling of your hands remembering what to do before your head catches up. It's strangely comforting, like meeting an old friend and realizing you don't need to impress each other anymore. And there's no urgency, no sense that it has to lead anywhere. If anything, the joy comes from knowing it doesn't. You can put it down again tomorrow and pick it up next month, and it'll still be there, patient, unbothered. It's a small reminder that not everything in life needs to move forward. Some things are happy to wait for you to come back quietly when you're ready, and when they do, they fit into your life in a way they never quite did the first time around. Weekends used to arrive with a bit of drama. There was anticipation, plans, a sense that something had to happen. At some point, though, the rhythm changes quietly, without announcement, and weekends become something else entirely. You still notice Friday, of course, but instead of excitement, it's more like relief, a gentle exhale. The weekend isn't a blank canvas anymore. It's a softer version of the week, familiar, predictable, comforting. Saturday mornings arrive earlier than they used to, often without effort. You wake up naturally, sometimes before the alarm, and there's a brief moment of confusion before you remember there's nowhere you have to be, and somehow that's better than sleeping in ever was. You find yourself doing small, unremarkable things, a bit of tidying, a slow cup of tea, maybe a walk that has no real destination. There's no rush to make the most of it. The enjoyment is quieter now, tucked into the spaces between tasks, and then Sunday comes along carrying that familiar feeling that used to mean dread. But even that softens with time. It becomes more about easing into the week than resisting it. You prepare gently, you put things in their place, you wind down without fighting the clock. Nothing about weekends is worse. They're just different, less loud, less ambitious, more forgiving. And somewhere along the way, you realize this new rhythm suits you perfectly. It's not about escaping life anymore. It's about settling comfortably into it. There's a particular kind of joy that sneaks up on you as you get older, and it's not the big, dramatic kind. It's the joy of small improvements, the kind no one else notices, and honestly, you don't really want them to. It's things like finally fixing a cupboard door that's been slightly off for years. Nothing dramatic changes. The kitchen looks the same, but every time you open it, there's a tiny moment of satisfaction, a quiet sense that the world is, at least in this one small corner, behaving itself, or replacing something that was technically working, but only just a kettle that took too long, a light bulb that flickered, a drawer that needed a very specific jiggle. Once it's sorted, life doesn't get better in a noticeable way. It just gets smoother, and that smoothness starts to matter. What's strange is how invisible these improvements are to everyone else. You don't announce them, you don't point them out, you simply enjoy them privately, like a small secret between you and your environment, a mutual understanding that things are now slightly improved. And the more of these tiny fixes you make, the calmer everything feels, not because anything big has changed, but because fewer things are quietly irritating you, fewer sighs, fewer eye rolls, fewer moments of mild resistance. So when you catch yourself feeling oddly pleased about a quieter hinge or a better fitting lid, don't dismiss it. That's not boredom, that's wisdom. It's the quiet joy of small, everyday improvements, the kind that make life feel just a little bit more settled, one unnoticed upgrade at a time. So there's this thing that happens when you get a bit older. Maybe it's subtle at first, or maybe you don't notice until one day it hits you. Every room you go into suddenly seems to have a chair that's yours, not literally yours, of course, but somehow it's the one you gravitate to. You walk into the living room, and there it is. The cushions are slightly too soft, the angle of the backrest just right. You settle in, and immediately everything else feels wrong. The sofa too wide, the other chair too upright. Somehow this chair gets you, then the kitchen, same thing. There's a seat that calls to you, maybe by the window or near the radiator. You don't choose it consciously. You just end up there, day after day. It's like the universe quietly assigned it to you, and you're too polite to say no. The funny part is, no one else notices. Friends sit down, shrug, shuffle uncomfortably, but the chair remains your chair. You try sitting somewhere else just for a change. It's okay for a minute or two, but eventually you're back in the chair that fits your body, your rhythm, your slightly creaky knees. And the real kicker, you start noticing it everywhere. When you visit your parents, the same chair phenomenon exists. Hotels, pubs, even friends' houses. There's always one chair that somehow makes sense. It's not a big deal, but somehow it's comforting, familiar, like a little anchor in a world that's otherwise constantly changing. So next time you settle into a chair and sigh without really thinking about it, know this: you've officially discovered one of Middle Age's most understated joys. Your chair has chosen you, and really, that's not too bad at all.